New state markets could boost U.S. legal cannabis sales by $72 billion by 2030. We're going to take a look at projected U.S. legal cannabis sales and then ask the questions, what happens when some of these companies have to declare bankruptcy? All of that coming up.
It's only entertainment.
Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Before we get into the industry expectations, taking a look at a couple of interesting bankruptcy examples. There's Even Co. They're based in Canada, of course. They're the only ones who can file bankruptcy right now. Otherwise, it's Schedule 1. You can't do that in the U.S. So as it says, as a result of continuing liquidity challenges, they're insolvent. They can't meet their liabilities when they became due. And so off to bankruptcy protection. Normally in the US, an investor would just be able to take it over and then run with that. That's unfortunately happened to a company like Boggy Boone in Washington State, phenomenal company that was veteran owned, and then the investor came in and snagged it. Unfortunately, the individual didn't have very good lawyers to help protect that from happening. So that's unfortunate, but it does happen quite a bit. When you see that a lot of the money that was supposed to be used for working capital, they're set to pay their employees and then not their bills, that's an issue. So they have to go back to creditor protection, an option that we definitely don't have in the US here, but interesting to see how it's working out in our neighbors to the north. Of course, it wasn't their fault. They had people who couldn't buy from them, and then that resulted in a spoilage of unsold inventory. But if you were smart, you would have just put it into concentrate and blasted it. So it sounds like they really didn't know what they were doing. Apparently, there was some investments that didn't come to fruition. You have to plan on that. A failed equity investment transaction, what you were just expecting that to happen. Oh, and then they blame COVID, of course. Well, that helped everybody. And if that's the problem, then you weren't doing it right. They owe money to the equivalent of the IRS up in Canada, the Canadian Revenue Agency. They owe them $195,000 for employee insurance. Ouch. And a pension plan. They get pensions? Whew, that's awesome. There's excise tax and a whole bunch of, they weren't paying anything. So that's how companies get into debt. Here's an example of CanTrust getting out of debt. So they're also based in Ontario. Again, Canada is able to do that. They completed financing worth 17 million Canadian dollars. They got this financing from an investor, and that was able to, I guess, get them out of the sticky situation that they found themselves in. It only cost them $11 million to get 90% equity. Wow, that's crazy. So that means that they emerged from a court supervised proceeding, effective immediately. And they're going to convene a shareholder meeting before the summer and explore alternatives for either applying the Ontario Securities Commission for revocation of failure to file, or taking steps to obtain a stock exchange listing and then make shareholders pay for all of it. That sounds like WeWork. Yeah, we're worth $47 billion, and then it fails, and they're like, oh, okay, we're only worth $3 billion. Like, where's the other $43 billion? Like, you were just going to make everyone else be the sucker for that. So they call it an end of a long journey, of a new beginning. Blah. Yeah, it's just bad management. They had no idea what they were doing. Again. So as we see the normalization of the cannabis industry, filing bankruptcy in and out, and all those crazy M&A transactions, stupid money coming in everywhere, people thinking legalization is going to happen. There's anticipations that the industry will reach a $72 billion valuation by 2030, assuming that, or maybe there was no assumption. I guess I was assuming that this is like legal. This is based on current legal states versus the expectation by 2030. Okay, so that is based on some assumptions that there's going to be some new state markets that are going to legalize and drive those sales past that $72 billion versus last year. There was an estimated 26.5 million, and they're going to expect this year to be around 32 billion. I think I said 26.5 million. That was obviously 26.5 billion last year, and 32 billion this year. So New Frontier Data is expecting 9 states that are going to have some really strong momentum in the medical markets, and then another 9 seem to have some fairly good adult use consumption by 2030. All of them, they expect to have that combined annual growth rate of 14%. Not very high for a compounded annual growth rate, but 72 billion within 8 years sounds pretty reasonable. This report that they have on U.S. cannabis for industry projections from New Frontier Data, take it with a grain of salt, is typically incredibly optimistic. Now, one of the new VPs, Bo Whitney, hopefully he's going to bring those expectations back down to reality. But in the meantime, take it with a grain of salt unless it has his name stamped on there. The key regulatory determinants that they're looking at for qualifying conditions of medical, some of the activation speed, how that means how fast people are going to from regulatory or not legalization but regulation to open market. Whenever that happens, that's speeding up quicker. It's going to be dependent on that happening, obviously. Now, if you strip away and just look at same states sales expectations, that compounding annual growth rate is 11%. Which doesn't make any sense because if you add those other 9 states, it's only 14. Still, that's pretty low, even for these guys, New Frontier Data. So they're expecting that as it is, they're going to we should see 57 billion by 2030. So current operating states are going to crush it. That's pretty good. So that's going to increase some broader social acceptance. Conservative areas like Arizona that loves their vape pens, but not pre-rolls. We might see some of those products kind of take off with the more normalization and adaptation of general trends. Flowers 40%, but you just don't see a whole lot of it. Or when you do, it's maybe confined to the basement, so nobody knows about it. There's going to be some broader economic developments that are going to impact near-term legal cannabis revenues. Looking at consumers already trying to endure generationally high inflation levels. Federal Reserve is going to have some crazy stuff with central bank digital coins. The supply chain was already screwed. Now we got high inflation. Now there's a war in Ukraine that's going to make gas prices and a lot of other things even more of an issue. You've got a lockdown in China, and then we already just had the Chinese New Year. A lot of things are going to take a long time. I had a car accident. Somebody ran into me before Christmas. I literally just got my car fixed last week. So that was like 3 months. And so if you're waiting on stuff, it's going to take a really long time. There's sustained macroeconomic disruptions that's going to negatively impact the cannabis consumer spending. You're going to have a lower legal market revenues over the near term. So looking at some research from New Frontier Data, rather, they kind of are expecting that cannabis spending is going to be highly recession resilient. And I've written articles about this. You can look at Sin stocks, and they are resilient. However, people are cutting way back. This is definitely generationally high inflationary pressures with pricing right now. And so people will be cutting way back or cutting it out because they've never paid gas prices this high. Rent's never been this high. The US dollar's never been, never had this low of purchasing power ever before, and it's not going to get any better. So all of those are issues that are going to impact the cannabis industry and how people are consuming. Could see consumption levels continue to decrease that we've been seeing over the last 6 months, reverting more towards pre-pandemic levels or even worse because of the inflationary pressures as consumers are trying to reduce their spending and bargain hunting. 420 could be huge this year. I myself am going to do 20 stores on 420 like I always do with a $420 budget and try and get as much as I can. there could be an economic recession or correction or depression. If there is that economic contraction sustained throughout the year, and we see that longest bull market in history come to an end, 2020 revenues are going to return lower than forecasted. Legalization still not going to happen in the near term. And so stock prices are going to take a near term retracement or reallocation, of spending is going to impact these businesses even more than they already are, furthering that M&A cycle as they kind of run out of capital. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.